and welcome to the latest episode of the Online Warriors podcast. I am one of your three hosts, as always. My name is Illeagle86, and I'm joined by my good friends Techtic and Nerdbomber after what has been a fairly eventful week, in particular if you are residing in the old US of A. Lots of uncertainty right now, lots of big changes potentially coming, changes that, the implications for you may not even yet be known. So it feels appropriate right now to say that, regardless of what happens in the coming months, and, there are a lot of experts saying that things could get quite bad, this should be considered a safe space for anyone who is feeling marginalized by the result. And it just felt appropriate to say that right now. Yeah. This is supposed to be a space of entertainment and safety, and that's what we are hoping to provide today.
Tariff-free.
So, tariff-free, yeah.
You went there.
no further comment on that bit, but we are here to entertain, to talk about the stuff we usually talk about. At least, hopefully. Who knows what's going to happen in the next hour, but that is the goal as we set out on this podcast journey. And more news. Maybe the biggest news you'll hear all week. Techtic just shaved his mustache. Techtic, do you want to give us any context on that? The extent to which you did shave your mustache, why you shaved it, the fact that you had a mustache in the first place.
So it wasn't pure
the
mustache, okay? I had a whole big home shower situation that I don't need to get into, but the short of it is my facial hair grows very, very fast, and so I didn't shave it for one day, my facial hair, and then I didn't shave it for a second day, and then we were on the third day, and then I realized I fucking hate facial hair. So then I shaved it off right before we started because I couldn't deal with it anymore.
So you said you had a home shower situation that you don't want to get into. Did I hear that right?
It was supposed to be an easy repair that ended up taking like 9 hours. Not 9 hours, but I'm exaggerating. But it took a lot longer than it should have.
Okay, so a repair. When you said situation, I was like, what's going on with you? But there was a mechanical or plumbing issue with your shower. I can understand.
It should have been like a half-hour job, and that's what the worst part of it was.
Well, you've come out on the other side, and you've made it here to podcast with your pals.
Yay.
Here at the Podcast Pals, working title for this show. That was the title that ChatGPT gave us for the show.
It talked about poop a lot. Like a lot. Disproportionate amount of poop talk.
Yeah.
I was always the one pooping.
You had diarrhea. I remember that very specifically from the script that it wrote us. But that's not the script we're working from today. We are actually going to do a full episode, usual stuff. We're going to be talking about Nintendo twice. So there's going to be, I think, front-loaded at the top of this episode, just a big block of Nintendo content that you all have come to know and love. We've been talking Nintendo a lot lately. We talked Alarmo, we talked Nintendo Music, which I have an update on that to get to later in the show. And we're going to be talking about one of my favorite movie franchises ever. And that'll be in the second half here. But we're gonna dig right into Nintendo because today this is a big scoop for us. Usually we get that because of the timing of the show, we'll get a Nintendo Direct and say, we didn't have time to watch it before the record. But the day of this record, Monday, November 11th, which by the way, happy Veterans Day, the Nintendo, they announced that they were doing a Direct at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific time, and we managed to squeeze that in before doing our record. So this is hot off the presses. Everyone's talking about it, I am sure. Even when this comes out on Wednesday, everyone's still going to be talking about it because it was 10 minutes of the preview of the Donkey Kong World at Nintendo World in Japan. So we're going to kind of unpack that. I'm going to take some flack right up front, and this is maybe going to be an unpopular opinion. And it's I'm leveling criticism at the creator of this is the creator of Donkey Kong who was doing this video, right?
I believe
the guy
so,
who was walking around doing everything. Dude is the world's biggest dork in the world.
No, I hate you.
I mean, to be fair, imagine a world where Online Warriors podcast land is a thing that exists. Would you not be geeking out just as much?
I'm living in that world right now.
At an amusement park. You know what I mean? Like,
imagine
there's Online Warrior roller coaster. There's Stephen Keller Way. I don't know. I'm just making things up.
Wow. It sounds amazing.
Doesn't it?
I want to go there so badly. Yeah, well, I think I should give him, I should walk back a little bit and give him a little bit of credit. I think there was also, I think we need to take a step back and think about what the best way to like preview a theme park world is, because I don't think that it's this. And I think there were cool things about it.
I thought he was absolutely... I thought he was absolutely adorable. At first, I was like, oh, especially when they were playing the bongos, I was like, oh, this is kind of cringy. But then I was like, wait a minute. Everyone's inner child is brutally murdered by corporate America. He didn't let his die. And I was like, this guy's a cutie patootie.
I mean, he was earnest and excited, and I will give him credit for that. I think that a guy walking around a theme park by himself and being like, look how cool this is a weird way to... But which would you prefer,
that or the CEO robot that came in that was staring at one single location on the screen going, welcome to...
Okay, that guy, also not great. Let me get ahead of that. Also not great. The best way to preview this, ironically, is to do like a soft open, like a family day or something, so you can see people like doing this stuff.
Yeah.
It just felt really strange to have him like mechanically walking around and being like, here's a letter K. If I do this thing, the K shows up in the app. And then like give a thumbs up and move on.
But they can't have him around people because he's the most important person in all of Nintendo. Like, he has to be escorted everywhere. They won't have him around people.
You think they put him in like a glass? They put him in a glass.
He's basically Bubble Boy. Yeah.
But also consider the following. At this point, this is kind of Nintendo's shtick. Everything is slightly cringy and a little dorky, and we all eat it up, and it's great. So
I think I complain about it every time, but I get your point.
I mean, most people love it. You're a hater, verified hater of this shtick, but I'm a lover.
That is true. When they do the regular directs with the games and they do all the snapping stuff, I'm like, can we just cut it out? Just show me the games. I don't need to see you snap.
I'm envisioning you saying cut it out like Uncle Joey and Friends, where you're actually doing the cut it out.
You mean Uncle Joey in Full House?
Oh my God.
Show some respect.
Yes. Oh my God. My brain has been fried for like over a week. Maybe not over, but like a week. Let's be real.
I'm also like, I'm just not, in fairness, and this is going to shock people hearing me say this, I don't think I was the intended target audience for this video. And I don't even just mean that in the sense that I think the target audience was children. I think it was, but that's not my point. My point is, I have never been a big fan of fun. And by that, I mean, I've never been a big fan of amusement
Okay,
parks.
but did you see this food? The like smoothie thing, and then the hot dog that had...
That hot dog was insane.
The hot dog looked off. It had
the
like
avocado.
It also had like Doritos in it. Off the hook.
Yeah. They're doing some stuff there. I mean, I do think that like it's hitting a lot of the classic beats. It had the like, I guess, is that near field communication, the stuff they're doing with the like where you get like you flash the band at the K and you find all the letters. Like, I think that's really cool, and that's like very similar to like when you go to Harry Potter World in Universal in Florida. Like, there's all kinds of stuff like that. If you buy one of their wands with the infrared tips, you can like do a bunch of stuff, and it's really cool. Like, having that level of interaction beyond just the rides, especially when there's only one ride, which we'll get to in a second. Like, I think that's very, very important, and it looks like it's going to be well executed. I really have no doubt that it will be. The ride preview right at the very end, I kind of lost it. I thought that was the funniest thing ever, where he was like, we're going to show you the ride. And they showed like going up the hill, and they're like, that's all we can show you. I was like, why would you show us anything? Like, I don't know. Just to tell us to come ride it. I feel like taking us up the hill was just like a really weird little tease that I don't know that I super appreciated. I liked the barrel. That was cool, but we couldn't see any of the rest of it. So I don't know. Just like get people in there. Like the thing with the bongos, you mentioned that, of him with like the two staff members. Like, I guess, Nerdbomber, you must be right that like people respond to the cringe in a positive way, but I would much rather like see like a dad and two of his kids doing it or something. You know what I mean? Like, see some people like actually like not corporate drones, just like there and like figuring it out. I think that would be a lot more interesting. But
I think
maybe that's just me.
Critique, aside from, the way the video was produced, was just that, and I don't know how big of an area this is supposed to be in the park, but it didn't feel like there was a ton. Do you know what I mean? There was like bingo, bango, bongos.
Well, there wasn't.
There's take your photo, one ride, and one like food stand thing. But like they made it seem by like finding the letters throughout this area of the park that there should be more park there. So I wonder if they just haven't shown it to us yet.
I think it was a very limited sneak peek.
That's fair.
I did definitely like the Donkey Kong Big fan. I thought that was very well
Oh
executed.
yeah, for sure.
That's such a cool suit. I was big into that. I thought it was funny too how the video started and he was like, "I'm at Nintendo World. We're gonna go to Donkey Kong World." And they fast motioned him walking. I was like, "Why didn't you just start in Donkey Kong World? Like, why am I going on this journey with you?"
Well, I think to understand, I think that was to point out that you're not going to a completely different park, that you're just basically walking through a section of this existing part of the park. To be fair, you look at other theme parks and you have to get passes to go into different areas of the park. So maybe that was their way of saying, hey, it's part of this, it's included.
Let me ask you guys something.
Do we think... Yeah, go ahead.
What was your absolute favorite thing that you saw in the video?
Dude, I already told you the hot dog. I know that's a very food-oriented response.
I didn't think
but
that was
that hot
okay.
dog looked hot dog.
All right. So then what I want to say is we need to talk about the barrel launcher and the roller coaster. That detail that was made
pretty
it
good
for me.
It was good, but again, it was like, we're at the barrel launcher. Anyways, tune in for next week's episode to see the rest of the roller coaster. I was like, that kind of sucks. But yeah, like it's a good idea for sure. I thought the roller coaster looked pretty cool. My favorite part was definitely the K, the letter K, and like the app interaction. Like, I was always a sucker for finding the KONG on all the levels of Donkey Kong, so that's definitely something that I would do if I was there. What do we think the odds are that the French CEO guy actually knows who Donkey Kong even is? Because I think it's like 20%. He has no idea what's going on.
I can buy that. I could for sure buy that.
I'm sure he's excited for the shareholder value that he's producing, but I don't know that he gives a rat's patootie about Donkey Kong. Also, shout out Cranky Kong. I like that part a lot. You know, there's good attention to detail everywhere, right? Like I think the story that they were telling as you go through the queue to get onto the ride, the plane for the store, Funky Kong's store, like I thought that was pretty cool too. Like it's just, you know, probably you could argue, especially on the level of parks like Universal and Disney, like the most important thing is like having the theme and the theming go like all the way down and not see any gaps in it. And I feel like in that respect, they are really just bringing it 150%. And that's what you have to do, especially in a 10-minute video like this, where you're kind of just showing what it is. And so, yeah, like it's unlikely, you know, I guess I don't want to speak for the two of you, but like, I probably won't ever go there. But they did say I think they said at the end, it's coming to the Universal in the States, yeah?
Yeah,
So,
I think so. They said
eventually
next
I might
year,
see the
right?
States version. Yeah. And, you know, I certainly think that coupling the Mario portion of the world with the Donkey Kong portion is what makes sense. The question I have for you guys is, what comes after that? What do you think the next big Nintendo franchise that gets its own world is? And I will start and say that I think it is Metroid.
I don't want to burst the bubble and be a little bit of a hater, but I feel like Metroid doesn't have as big of a following as, unfortunately, you guys wish it did. I think...
What about Kirby?
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say Kirby. The cuteness level is just a little bit more off the charts with that than Metroid.
You're not going to like this because it's a newer IP, but I feel like realistically it's going to be a Splatoon world.
I could see that, but it's going to get messy.
Yeah, and I feel like...
If you get kids in a Splatoon world, the logistics are a nightmare.
You're assuming
they're buying the paint guns
gun.
and they're
There doesn't
shooting
have to be
everybody.
paint guns.
But like, what do you...
Oh, there has to be paint guns.
I'm just
No.
thinking of like...
You can shoot things that light like blank things. You can shoot them with like a laser beam and they light up with like pink LEDs.
I just feel like Kirby has
Okay,
a
you're
bigger
getting me there.
platform, though.
Kirby has more history, certainly. So if they're going to go that route, I think what you're describing are two schools of thought. If they want to go with the current trendy game, like we've seen in the past few announcements from Nintendo that like Splatoon, they consider it to be a major flagship brand. I don't necessarily agree or have played much of it, but if they want to go with the quote unquote new and trendy route, they'll go with that. I do think that as far as like video game institutions go, Kirby is probably next up because, you know, I do kind of agree about, I think Metroid Prime would be, or just Metroid in general, would provide some really cool sci-fi theming that would cut the rest of it. But I can certainly, you know,
But
admit
they've already
that Kirby
subtly
probably plays
integrated Metroid in Nintendo World with like, if you look up in the ceiling, the Metroid, the morph ball is hidden about in like various spots in Nintendo World. I don't think they're going to give her own section, unfortunately.
I think you may well be correct. So this, they did announce at the end of this video, December 11th, 2024 is when this land officially opens. So if you are in that neck of the woods and you are a Nintendo fan, you can go ahead and hit that up and let us know what it's like. Reach out to us on Twitter. Why the heck not? Let us know what you think and what you think the next world would be. We have @OW Illeagle 86, that's me, @OW Techtic, @OW Nerdbomber in our main show account, @Online Warriors 1, that's over on Twitter again, so go check us out there. Also in the news for Nintendo, we got more Nintendo news, gonna just slap them both together. One of the big things that we've probably talked about a few times already on this show for various console releases, whenever a new console's coming around, and we know that Nintendo is working on the next generation of the Switch, whenever a new console comes around, everyone's asking the question, what about backwards compatibility? Nintendo kind of just I don't know if they let it slip out or if they just purposely dropped.
It was
in a corporate management policy
it
briefing
was just
that they're
a
just doing
weird
it.
shadow drop.
So,
I don't know if it was meant to get out to the public, but then they posted it on the internet to the public. So I don't know. It was weird timing. It didn't feel like it, matched anything. I think it might have been even I don't want to keep coming back to this, but I think wasn't it on election night in the middle of the night?
It was November 5th. And I'm not good with days, but I do believe that was election night. So
I'm not a conspiracy
they dropped it when people were focused on something else.
I know what Nintendo's up to.
But I mean, I am excited about this because one of the things, and I'm not saying that I would ever hold off on buying a video game, particularly because I'm waiting to upgrade to the next console. But sometimes if a new game comes out for the Switch, I'm kind of do I want to just hold off? Because the Switch 2 is imminent.
There's comfort there's comfort in having the ability to
and
do
one
that,
of the things,
right?
And right, wrong, or indifferent, Nintendo is known for re-releasing remastered versions of their games. So I'm kind of in my mind, I'm well, they'll remaster it for the Switch 2, but now I know I can just buy it now. And if we get a Switch 2, or whatever this new Switch will be called, I don't have to worry about it. I can play it on anything. Not that I would get rid of my Switch either, but if Techtic's using the OG Switch and I'm on the Switch 2 and then I can't use my cartridge, that would be a bummer. But I don't have to worry about that now.
No, everyone knows that I'm the Switch user in this house. So
yeah,
I'm
you would be on the Switch too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
I think you're right that Nintendo, and by the way, all video game companies these days have shown a penchant for remastering a game that's from a generation or two ago and slapping a giant price tag on it and saying this is remastered. I'm looking at you, Naughty Dog and Sony, with the Last of Us stuff. They're just going to remaster those until the cows come home. And I can certainly understand wariness in that regard before this announcement. But I also think that, and I've mentioned this before on previous episodes, Nintendo really seems to value and oftentimes put a lot of emphasis on their older properties in a way that they don't always have to. Sometimes I feel they go out of their way to do so. And really, I'm talking more about their truly retro NES stuff. But I do think that mentality can extend to hey, we don't want to take things away from people. I think the big question now becomes backwards compatibility. I guess, how are those games going to play on the Switch 2? Presumably, they will play exactly the same.
If not a little bit better.
The Switch 2 is, if not a little bit better, I guess. I would assume the Switch 2 is going to be the same form factor and the same kind of idea, just with better graphics, maybe better battery life. I have no idea. So I can imagine the experience being much the same. The other thing about this, too, that I think bears mentioning relative to things like the PS5 and the Xbox One is the Switch has never really been about blowing the doors off graphically, and I really doubt the Switch 2 is going to be about that either. So at that point, you kind of have to ask the question, how difficult is it really to support backwards compatibility? I imagine it's really a business decision more than anything else. I doubt it's much of a technical decision, but I could be completely wrong about that. I guess when you say you're going backwards compatible, you by proxy kind of announce that your games are going to have the same form factor, right? Or at least something very close to it.
Or have
that's
a certain shape that's modular.
Right. So that's kind of the announcement within the announcement here, I guess. We still don't have a timeline for the Switch 2. We don't really know exactly when it's coming. We're getting little bits and pieces dropped.
I feel like it's got to be soon.
We have been over the past few months.
What's interesting, too,
I think we're coming up on it.
Is on the announcement, it said they're going to give us more detail on the Switch 2's compatibility with the Switch. So does that mean there's going to be like, we can also maybe use Switch controllers and other things like that from a hardware perspective beyond just the game?
I would like to think that does mean that your controllers will have to work with the Switch 2, or at least the different types of controllers. Like the Joy-Cons will need to have the same general technology, because if you think about all of the games, if you're really offering backwards compatibility, I'm thinking things like Ring Fit Adventure, which I know is kind of a niche title, but I have it and I know it was very popular. Yeah, you have to be able to like use the same slidey rail thing to interact with that ring. If that's truly going to be your promise that things are going to be backwards compatible. And I'm even thinking things like, you know, the fitness boxing, Mario Golf, and the Switch Sports. I feel like you're going to have some overlap in the controller compatibility. So it doesn't, you know, it's not out of the realm of possibility to say, hey, maybe this signals that our Joy-Cons will work in the future as well. And to your point, Illeagle, I think you said the Pro Controller. I feel like that for sure will be forward compatible.
I would hope so. I mean, the thing about this, like, incidentally, earlier this week, my wife and I we have not bought any Joy-Cons other than the 2 that just came with the console. And we just got Mario Party, and we're like, you can only play those with Joy-Cons. Hey. So, like, we can only play Mario Party with 2 people. So, like...
Sir, you got Mario Party? Where was our invite? I'm just kidding.
I did get Mario Party, but there was no invite because we only have 2 Joy-Cons. How's that for an answer? So like, I looked into buying Joy-Cons. They're so freaking expensive.
Yeah.
Guys. Do you know how much Joy-Cons are right now? It's insane. They're $80.
No, really?
For 2 of them. Yeah. Which like, I'm not about that. Like Nintendo, I'll pay that money and I'll grumble the whole time and I'll pay it. But like, I'm gonna make dang sure to whatever my ability that it's usable on the Switch too. And, you know, I will say lately, like, I typically am not, and I think this is borne out by, you know, the stuff I've mentioned on the show over the years. Like, I'm not a big go out and get a console right when it comes out kind of guy. I think with the PS5, I guess I kind of had to wait a little bit. The Switch, I waited a long time. But I will say, like, the Switch, my experience with it right now, I'm just so loving it that if ever I was to, like, buy a console on launch, it probably would be the Switch 2. So I am, relative to other console announcements, like kind of wired into this one. And, you know, there's no denying that this is good news, right? I don't think there's anyone who is going to hop on Twitter right now or chime off in the comments being like, backwards compatibility is bad for gamers. Like, I just don't think that's true. So I guess you can kind of just consider this your piece of good news for the podcast. I don't know that there's a whole lot of debate to be had about it.
I will say,
it just kind of
I know you already kind of said this, but we all know here that I am not the Switch gamer in the household, right? We're all aware of that. But I have to say, something about that console just slaps. And you know I love my Xbox, you know I love my PlayStation, you know I love my Steam Deck, but there is just something so nice about the Switch. The fact that they were able to merge the memory of the Wii into the motion controls, and it's just like such a fun on the go and party system. Like, there is no party like a Mario Party.
When I first got the Switch, I mean, we were doing the podcast, so longtime listeners will remember, I got the Switch during the pandemic, and it was very hard to get because of scalpers, and I hate those people forever. But I believe the first game I got and played was Luigi's Mansion 3, and I was just so locked in immediately. I was like, this has been missing from my life. And, you know, since then, there's been ebbs and flows with it. I've been into my PS5, then I get into the Switch and back and forth. Right now, I'm in a Switch phase. And it's just an incredible piece of hardware. I love it so much. I'm looking into getting better peripherals for it so I can, like, hold it in portable mode for a long time without my hands getting tired, which is, like, a very old person thing to say, but it's just a fact of, like, I'm just playing Balatro for, like, hours at a time, and I'm like, I gotta put this down for a while because my hands are, like, falling asleep. So I guess Nintendo would work on that for the Switch too. Make it so that I can play Balatro for hours on end and forego any personal obligations otherwise. If you do that, I'll be a happy camper. So again, no further details on the Switch 2 right now. They did also announce that Nintendo Switch Online will be available on the Switch 2. And by the way, we're just calling it the Switch 2. I don't know that it's actually going to be called that. But that's, again, kind of an unsurprising detail, I would say. So we will hit you guys up with more details on the Switch 2 as they become available. And in the meantime, get hyped. Or don't if you're a Nintendo hater. And if you are a Nintendo hater, I guess that's your right. We'll take a short break now before coming back to talk about Tom Cruise. And no, we don't mean the Scientology stuff. That stuff's weird. we're going to be talking about Mission Impossible. But before we do that, we'll take a break. And before we take our break, it is that time again, Mr. Keller, Sir Keller. Stephen Keller has been supporting us on the show at the highest of our 3 levels of Patreon support. As a result, he gets this producer shout out every episode. We want to thank him for all he's done for the show. He is a knight at our square table. He gets, of course, input into the weekly game segment, this producer shout out, access to the monthly secret segment and the vlog, and the occasional guest spot on the show. So if you want to be like Steven, get access to all of those sweet, sweet perks, you can head over to patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast, get the details there. There's also a Squire level of support, which is one below the knight, that gets you access to the monthly secret segment and vlog, and a page level gets you access to the monthly secret segment. So again, that's patreon.com/onlinewarriorspodcast. Say hi to us, say hi to Steven, help us keep the mics on in this troubling time. We will be right back after these messages to talk about Mission Impossible.
Welcome aboard Too Vague Airlines. We're cruising here at 40,000 feet. That might be too many feet, but what do I know? I'm not really an airplane. I'm a podcaster. Actually, I'm a co-podcaster. I'm the co-host of several episodes of the Too Vague podcast. If you haven't heard it, you're missing out. Check out the Too Vague podcast. Any place podcasts do whatever they do.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned off the fasten seatbelt sign. For your continued safety, Too Vague Airlines requires that you keep your seatbelt fastened at all times while seated. But while you're seated, you can tune into the Too Vague podcast, TWOVAGUE, on your favorite podcast services and enjoy the flight.
All right, we are back. There has never been a better time to ask for Tom Cruise's help with an impossible mission. I don't know that was the intent of their timing of the trailer drop. I suppose if it actually had been their intent, they would have dropped it like Tuesday night or Wednesday. But nevertheless, today, on the day that we share breath right now, Monday, November 11th, we got the first trailer for Mission Impossible 8, titled Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning.
Okay, this is your guide. This is your franchise. I have a very important question. Based on the title of that movie, and even this
is it. This is his last one.
This is the last one. This is it?
This is his last one.
Oh.
I'm guessing the franchise will go on without him.
You think he would allow that?
But that is...
like, that's his legacy.
That is the meat of this, right? Is, I think the trailer itself, there's a couple things I want to touch on in terms of the content of the trailer, but the main thing is like... And I'm sure we said the same stuff if we talked the Mission 7 trailer on this pod, which I probably would have forced us to do so the way I'm forcing us to do with this one. One of the main topics of conversation, I'm sure, was, good grief, Tom looks old. And you know what? He does look old. Like, for his age, I don't know how old he is, but for his age, I'm sure he looks good. But also, he just is too old to, like, be doing this stuff. It was the same thing when Indiana Jones, whatever the last one was, came out. And it's like, oh my gosh, he's barely alive. Like, we got to move on here. Same principle here. So, the way this trailer kind of shapes up through and through, they're doing a lot of interesting things. I mean, the movie is called The Final Reckoning. I think there's a lot of moments in the trailer that point directly to not necessarily him dying, but this kind of being his final go-round. I can certainly imagine if you're Tom Cruise, you're pushing back on that, but the writing's on the wall. It's the fact of the matter at this point. I think the more interesting stuff this trailer did, and only true mission heads will see me on this, there are call-outs to the last movies, or to previous movies in the franchise, like all over it. There's the knife from Mission Impossible 1, which that was probably the more overt call-out in the trailer, but there's also a call-out to Mission Impossible 3, which is one of the less popular movies in the franchise, but it's looking like they're going to be doing a lot of callbacks to previous installations, kind of as a goodbye tour to Tom Cruise's character, I imagine. But I think that's very, very interesting. So, like, I'm going to see the crap out of this movie pretty much no matter what. So for me, May 23rd, 2025 is circled on the old calendar. But I'm curious. I don't think, you guys certainly aren't in the same spot as me with this. So I want to get your thoughts on the state of the franchise, I guess, as more of an outsider.
Honestly, Tom Cruise is looking a little bit beat. And like for his age, like sure. I couldn't do these stunts and stuff that he's doing now at my age in my early 30s. Like, that's not my criticism here. It's more so just, where are the young action stars, And so from that aspect, because I feel like we really, if you look at the action movie swath of franchises, none of them are helmed by young people. And Tom Holland almost got his with Uncharted. I don't know what's going on with the sequel to that. I know you didn't love that movie, but like, if you're just coming at it from like an action movie perspective and you haven't played the games, like I thought that was a pretty good movie. Other than that, I can't even tell you any, tentpole action.
Well, they've tried.
And so maybe it is time for him to move on and give someone new the spotlight, because realistically, how likely is it that some dude in his 60s could still be doing some of this stuff?
So Mission itself has tried a couple things. They brought in, I believe it was the fourth one, they brought in Jeremy Renner, and at the time that they did, everyone was like, okay, this is their Tom Cruise replacement, because he was either directly coming off of or about to go into doing The Bourne Legacy, which was supposed to be him replacing Matt Damon. Neither of those really took off. I think after 2 movies in the Mission franchise, he just kind of noped out.
But also, Jeremy Renner is not much younger.
Well, that's kind of the thing, right? And like all the other guys I'm thinking of, so like I can picture fairly recent movies for Ryan Reynolds, for Ryan Gosling, for Chris Evans that are, I think, designed to be, quote unquote action tentpoles and, franchise starters. And I'm not really sure that any of them have really worked out. I think there's an argument to be made here, maybe not so much in this day and age, but over the past 15 years, action tentpoles have kind of gone by the wayside, those that are not named Mission Impossible or the James Bond franchise, because of the MCU. And it's been hard to stand anything up in the wake of that, taking a lot of, bankable talent off the board. But that excuse doesn't exist anymore, right? So it is time for that to kind of come back around. I think right now, and my read of the last movie was that Mission was actually trying to do it with Haley Atwell, but I don't know for sure that that's still what their plan is. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. It's very possible they just sundown the franchise entirely after Tom Cruise goes, because I do think this is his last one. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they either tried to make a Mission 9 with someone else that's currently in the franchise, or if they, kind of went the James Bond route and just kind of like let it sit dormant for 10 years, and then someone came along and dusted it off and found whoever they thought the new Tom Cruise was. But there's really no doubt, I mean, with his time in the franchise coming to a close, Tom Cruise, based on what he's doing in this, he's never been more desperate to like actually die on camera. Like that's one of the only takeaways from this trailer, right? Is like he's hanging off biplanes. He's like, please, I need to die doing these movies or I won't be fulfilled. And it's insane to watch him do it. And, I think at this point, if I'm being honest, the returns are diminishing a little bit. I think his best stunt work probably wasn't even 7. It was probably 6. Like, I think 6 was where he really may have peaked doing some of the stuff that he did. Maybe even 5. But I think in particular the last one, well, I thought it was a perfectly good movie. It didn't have the same pizzazz. And I think they're probably ending it at the right time if they are ending it. But we'll need to wait and see.
Is this day one for you? Are you like going to the movie theater?
This, if ever I was going to go to an opening night, it would be for this. I don't know for sure that I will, just because I don't like crowds and people and things. But if I can manage it, this is the kind of thing I would show up for. The other action franchise I didn't mention is John Wick, by the way, which is doing very well.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to go on probably forever. And, Keanu Reeves certainly isn't like a spry young buck, but he's certainly younger than Tom Cruise is. So
is he
I guess they're headed in the right direction.
Tom Cruise?
I would give him, not significantly, I would probably give him a good 5 to 7 years younger than Tom Cruise. I'll Google it while we're talking, but I'll Google it while we're going through What Are We Up To Wednesday, and that'll be the nice teaser for folks to stick around. But yeah, I think this is going to be good. It's going to make like $1 trillion, although at this point, that movie is like clinically over budget. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually make any money, which is maybe another reason why this franchise.
However, and there's
a lot of
Tom Cruise is kind of a crazy guy based on some of the Scientology stuff, and even like jumping out of planes with no security, whatever. But I will give him credit
also
because
crazy,
part of the reason why I believe this movie is over budget is because during COVID, when things were shut down, he was still paying his cast and crew and everything their full salaries. So kudos to him for that.
I was going to mention that myself. I should say, like, I love the Mission movies. I like a Tom Cruise movie. I think that dude is a complete wacko and also more than likely probably not a very good person most of the time. But there's one thing that I think you can unassailably say about him, which is that there's no one that loves movies the way that Tom Cruise loves. If you watch an interview with Tom Cruise, you can tell that he was put on this earth solely to do what he does. And he loves it so much. And like, he is just all in. Like, I think it is the right time for him to leave this franchise and like, you know, maybe do more quote unquote serious things. But like, it does have to be very hard for him. Like and you know, Top Gun was what it was, right? But like, Mission Impossible for the past 20 years has kind of like been his identity on camera. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does in the wake of that. And I don't really know what that looks like. And I'm not even sure if he knows what it looks like, because these movies have also become these big spectacle things that have probably consumed most of his time and effort over the past at least 10 years. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes next. It'll be interesting to see where the franchise goes next, if anywhere. But in the meantime, we have to wait until the 23rd of May of next year. Have you guys seen any of these movies?
No.
That's a lie. I know Techtic
Not
has.
one.
We actually went to the drive-in with you to see one of these movies. And it was, I think, the third movie in the slate. There were like 2 spooky, scary movies.
yeah.
And then this was like the third movie. And I fell asleep.
It was probably, thinking about the timeline of when we would have done that, it was probably Mission 4 or Mission 5. Both good. I mean, third movie in a drive-in slate.
Honestly,
you're you're fighting gravity at
I
that
don't
point.
know if I
So,
can fault the movie for that. I think I was sleepy. And I think too, the movies that we
Yeah.
had seen in that slate, like typically you see a triple feature and it's like an hour-and-a-half movie paired, like followed up by 2 other hour-and-a-half movies. But I think we saw like 3 3-hour movies. So by the time Mission Impossible started, I was like, I got nothing left. I'm wiped out here.
yeah. The sun was coming up. So that's totally understandable. But in any case, if you want to catch up, now's the time, because this is coming out May 23rd of next year. You can pack them all in. I will say I got a friend into the Mission series recently, like within the past 5 years. And
Do they hold up?
before going to see, yes, they do hold up. And we did a bunch of them before going to see Mission 6. So this would have been 3-4 years ago at this point, I think. They're fun. They're a fun binge. And yeah, I do think they do hold up. Besides the obvious fact that Tom Cruise is like in them, I don't think there's anything particularly problematic about them, in the way that I think you can watch a James Bond movie and be like, what the hell? Sometimes. Less so now, but those I don't think hold up truly as well. So yeah, shout out the Mission franchise. Also, I think most of them are free to stream on various platforms if you're ever so inclined. Anywho, that brings us to What Are You Up To Wednesday. This is the part of the show where we talk about what we've been up to. And I'm going to go first this week. So I'll go first, and then I will look up how much younger Keanu Reeves is than Tom Cruise. And I know we're all waiting with bated breath to get that piece of information. But in the meantime, I have to publish an errata from last week. I believe last week I very confidently and boldly said, I'll never get Nintendo Music because I don't have a means to get Nintendo Music because I don't have Nintendo Switch Online. Flash forward to like 2 days later, Techtic, the good friend that he is, was like, we have a Nintendo Switch Online account. It's like one of those family accounts, and we'll get you in here. You can experience Nintendo Music.
It's like
you
a
can have
brother to
Nintendo
me.
Switch Online. It'll be great. And I was like, that's so kind of you, Techtic. I accept. He said, give me your email.
I put myself out there and everything.
And he sent me a link to join, and I clicked the link, and it said, give us your email. I gave them the email, and they said, hey, dummy, you already have Nintendo Switch Online. You can't join another person's family account. So, this is a shout out to my friend who I got Nintendo Switch Online with like 3 years ago, and I believe we're doing a swap there for Hulu. So that's how we're doing the money math with it. Shout out to that guy. I don't think he listens to the podcast, but shout out to him. Additionally, I need to talk about Nintendo Music and my experience with it, because I have used it since realizing that I had it. And the experience, I would say, has been a mixed bag of sorts. I think that, so the broad strokes, I think that a lot of the features that we talked about when we did a deep dive into it last week, like, they are really cool. Like, I've used the extend feature already a few times. I've used a couple of the curated playlists. I've played Mario Kart music while I've been driving. That's definitely a highlight. I've, of course, hit up the Metroid Prime soundtrack. It's been great. There are two, I guess, negatives that I want to highlight. One, it has had certainly more playback issues than Spotify has. And I'm not saying it has had very many, but it has had a couple, and they have been noticeable. So that's one thing. Techtic, it sounds like it's
Yeah,
going
I
to be
was going to
emphatically
say
agreeing with
they
me on that.
definitely need to figure out their bandwidth issue, because whatever Spotify is doing, it is significantly more optimized, because when I have poor service, I never have issues with it loading, running, whatever. This, whoof.
The other thing with it that I want to bring up, so like using Metroid Prime as an example, because I don't know if you guys know this, I love Metroid Prime. Like, if you look at that game and the tracks that they have, I think they have like 36 tracks for it. They have freaking everything. They have like sound effects in the game. Like the little 10-second music that plays when you go to a save station. They have that. If you want to listen to it on repeat and drive yourself bananas, you can do that. What they don't have is Metroid Prime 2. What they don't have is Super Mario 64. I could not believe I searched Super Mario 64 and they didn't have it. So there is
such a limited library right now.
There's a very limited library right now. And I assume they're going to expand it, but right now it is a pain point. It is painful to be like, I want to listen to like that Christmassy song from Super Mario 64, which by the way is something that happened to me in the past week. I went to look up Super Mario 64 and they didn't have it. And I was floored. Like, to me, that's one of their flagship titles.
I feel like it'll come with time, though, right?
I'm sure they're working that. I would hope so. I would think so. I don't know for sure, but I would imagine they're continually building the library. But right now, the library is a little bit small. So I guess this is my PSA for people. If you are looking to get it, just go in with that mindset. And again, a lot of people probably have it, and they don't need to like go get Nintendo Switch Online to get it, or they're like me and they don't know that they can have it and they should go check. But yeah, that's been going on for me. I've been enjoying that to some extent. The only other thing I want to update on is I watched a movie over the past week called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Have you guys seen this movie?
No, I've vaguely heard of it.
Get into spoilers.
I haven't seen the trailer, but like I've seen it come up on social media.
It's an interesting movie. I would recommend watching it for a couple of reasons. One, you get to watch Pete Davidson die. I don't know that that's not really a spoiler, because it's like a murder mystery movie and he's in it. So like, I guess it is kind of a spoiler, but like you'll see when you watch it. And I personally find Pete Davidson to be pretty insufferable. Shout out to Pete Davidson. So that was pretty great. The other thing I will say about it is that it's like a cool hour and a half, which I always love. And it is legitimately a pretty compelling mystery at times. It does a lot, especially in the second half of the movie. It wades a little bit into like cringecore. I don't use that term lightly, but it gets pretty cringy and like Gen Z-y, like 2/3 of the way through for a bit. But compellingly casted, pretty well plotted, and I think it has a really fantastic ending that's worth sitting to get to. So I would recommend it. I think I watched it on HBO Max, otherwise known as Max, so would recommend checking that one out. That has me done, so I will turn things over to Nerdbomber to keep us rolling.
All right, so I have a couple things. The first thing is a game called Copycat. So this is a debut game from an Australian indie developer called Spoonful of Wonder, and they actually provided us with the review code to play this game. So props and thank you to them for providing the code. So here's the review. So this is a cat game, if you couldn't get from the title. Obviously, it's been a very stellar few years for cat games. You know, you've had Stray, you've had Little Kitty Big City, and now you have Copycat. And this is a very narratively focused game. It's kind of like a cat walking simulator. If I had to compare it to a different type of game, it's not like a mystery game like Firewatch, but it is like that type of game where there's some quick timey events, but a lot of it is just walking around and being a cat. It is a very narratively focused game. I think I might have said that already, but there's full voice acting, which for an indie game is practically unheard of, I feel like. And there's a lot of really great sound design. Obviously, I feel like in a cat game, that's pretty important. You have to get like those meows, right? And they did that here. If you're a cat owner or have owned a cat at any point in your life, you're going to hear some sounds that you're very familiar with. But basically, you play as a shelter cat who gets adopted by an elderly owner. And the owner's daughter is not super pleased when she discovers you in the house. And I don't want to give too much of the story away, but basically, put two and two together, you find yourself back on the street trying to find your way back to your home. And, you know, there's some fun, troublesome cat type activities, like you can rip up toilet paper, play with cat toys, meow to your heart's content. Like I said before, there's some quick time events, but ultimately there's not a ton of weight to any of those quick time events or any of really the decisions that you make in the game. Like sometimes you're proffered the decision if you want to like bite or scratch somebody, and it really doesn't matter what you choose to do. So in that manner, it is a very linear story. The story is also a little bit short. It only took me about 3 hours to complete in total. So I think right now the standard price is $20. I would probably wait for a little bit of a sale personally, just based on, it's 3 hours, and because it is a narrative sort of linear game, there's not a ton of replayability there, just bang for buck wise. Probably want to wait for a scale. But all that being said, I did really enjoy the story. It touched on a lot of issues like the relationship between pet and owner, the responsibility of having a pet, aging, family dynamics, trust, etc. Like it really touched on a lot of emotional story beats. And I think it's definitely worth people's time to play. And I think it's probably one of those games where if you're thinking about getting a pet, just from, things to consider from like an emotional standpoint and a responsibility standpoint, I feel like this is one of those games that might help you, think about the bigger implications of that decision. I played this on Steam Deck. Overall, it worked pretty okay. I think I ran into an issue where it froze a couple times, but otherwise I really had no issues with it. I don't know if that was the game itself or my Steam Deck freezing, because I just had too much stuff going on in the background. But otherwise it played okay. I didn't really have any issues with it. I mean, if you're looking for a kitty cat game that has a lot of emotional, heartstrings to tug on, I think it was pretty good and well worth, taking a shot, especially as a first game from this indie studio. It was, I thought, really impressive, and I can't wait to see what they do next. So that is my review of Copycat. And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on was still playing Dragon Age: The Veilguard. Still very early in. I think I was telling Techtic this yesterday as I was playing. I was like, I went to do this side mission, but now I've stumbled across like 2 or 3 other like very interesting things that I want to explore. And this isn't like a super open worldy type game, but I think they've done a really good job like world building and putting things to find and discover and puzzles along the way on your path to, missions, sort of like in God of War. I feel like very similar to that, where it's not
it was literally about to say
like
that.
it's not quite open
like
world, but you discover things along the way that kind of derail you and you go explore. And so I'm currently doing a lot of that and not making a lot of progress necessarily in the story, but I'm having a good time. So still, plugging away at that.
Yeah, I spent so much time in God of War being like, story, what story?
Yes.
I got treasure to find. I mean, that's like my whole thing.
The allure of treasure chests, intoxicating.
Yeah, for sure. Right on. Well, Techtic, that leaves us with
So I got 2 things that I want to talk about. Before I do, I did want to also mention that Nintendo Music needs to add a genre search feature. That was the thing that was troubling me that I want them to add. So anyway, with that, the first thing I want to mention is we watched a movie called My Old Ass. This is starring
Aubrey Plaza,
who I absolutely love, and we thought this is a movie about where her younger self kind of
does drugs. You can say drugs.
Okay, fine. She does drugs and like interacts with her future self somehow. And like I thought it was going to be a comedy, but boy, was it heavy. But it was good. Like I definitely was choked up and wanted to cry throughout it. But it was good. It is a heavy movie, but it's a good movie. So definitely check this out. I don't want to spoil anything because like I didn't know what to guess throughout the whole thing.
It is on Prime Video if you're interested in streaming it. I think it had like a limited theatrical run, but now it's on Prime.
And then the other thing was,
I really want to hear. I want to hear what you would have said to try and imply that she does drugs without saying she does drugs, because it sounded like you were building up to something great there. But anyways, go on.
I'll let people's imaginations run wild. The other thing was a friend had us over to play the new Mario Party. So I love a good Mario Party. It stayed true to, you could be good at the mini games, you could be bad at the mini games, and it's anyone's game up until the very last turn.
Tell them what happened, Techtic.
Which infuriates me. Infuriates me, by the way.
This man.
I hate this.
Okay, first Nerdbomber, she had it in the bag. Then some shenanigans happened. And I was
had
like,
5 stars. 5 stars.
I was like, all right, they took her out. but now that puts me in first because I was in second. Great. And then the person that was in last place ended up with all of the stars and all of the money in one freaking turn.
Chance.
Infuriating.
I think Mario Party, a lot of people would say that that's a strength of Mario Party, but as someone who tends to do pretty well in the mini games, it is a
strength. I stand by it. While I am frustrated at the L, that's how you keep people engaged through the whole time.
Yeah, I suppose that's fair. Also, to be clear, I have a much older Mario Party. We just got 2 Mario Parties ago. We got it, or maybe 1 Mario Party ago. I don't know, but we got it because the new one was coming out, so it was on sale for $40.
We only have Mario Party 1 and 2. We only got the much older ones.
It's a great franchise. Right on, man. That brings us to Quiztown, and in a rarity, Techtic, you are hosting today. It is a showdown between yours truly and the Nerdbomber. Going through the records here, I'm 13-8. Nerdbomber 13-10 on a little bit of a skid.
Gross.
But she has an opportunity here. Techtic 9-18, and Steven 2-1. Shout out to Steven. So Nerdbomber, if you win, you would move to 14-10. I would move to 13-9.
And I think that would make me almost immune then from falling in last place. Correct? Because
I think you're both immune from falling in last place.
I think we're both safe. I think we're both safe.
You underestimate how bad I am.
We'll get to that when we get to it. In any case, Techtic, the floor is yours.
All right, so today's trivia is magicians. That's right.
Love this for me.
And so everyone gets 1 + 1 or 1 infinitely 0. And we're going to get started with Harry Houdini, otherwise known as the Handcuff King, is regarded as the world's most famous magician. When was he born?
I love magicians, by the way. That's just an aside. That's not me saying I'm going to win this quiz because I'm kind of an idiot, but I love magicians so much. When was Harry Houdini born? Boy, I have so much I could say about Harry Houdini, but I won't bore the listeners. He would have been born we're talking late 1800s. We're talking 1882.
I feel like 1900, and not to derail the trivia, but dibs on using Harry Houdini as my fantasy football team name because we're all in a league together next year, and I'm going to exclusively make sure my bench is handcuffs.
Okay. You both busted.
Oh.
Rats.
It was 1874, so he was a bit older than you guys thought.
Oh,
you were close, though.
Come on, man. I accept that. So long as Nerdbomber didn't get a point, I'm happy.
Also, I really thought I cooked there with that fantasy football thing, and I did not. I did not.
No.
It wouldn't be a good team. You would struggle out of the game.
I already do.
I'm a practical man. That's true. I think we all are struggling a little bit.
You should actually call your team Gilbert Genesta, and I'll tell you more about that when we get to that question. All right, so David Copperfield is the highest paid magician in Vegas. How much does he make per year on average?
I feel like to have a Vegas residency, I feel like you get paid a stupid amount. I'm going to say he gets paid $15 million.
That feels high. This dude's not even on TV anymore. I'm going to give you a sporting chance. I'm going to basically cut your answer in half, and I'm going to say $7 million.
All right, so Nerdbomber takes this one. He makes $64 million a year.
Holy shit. Guys.
Good for you, Dave.
I should have been a magician when I grew up.
He's followed by Penn and Teller is the next highest, if you were curious.
Magic is hard. I get it, man.
All right. When is the first evidence of magic tricks being performed?
We're in Jesus times for sure.
I thought you were going to say Jesus.
We're in Jesus times. This is probably... I mean, we got to be BC.
He's pulling coins out of people's ears, and they're like, I got to follow this guy.
This is an ancient Chinese ritual. I'm going to say 1400 BC. We're going way back.
I have no concept of time. I'm going to say 3000 BC.
All right, so Nerdbomber takes this one. Illeagle, you busted. It was 2700 BC.
Oh, snap.
That's crap. Gosh dang it.
What was even happening around that time period? Do we know?
Magic tricks. that was it. There was nothing else.
Okay. The Society of American Magicians is founded at Marintinka's Magic Shop in New York City It is the oldest magic society in the world. What year was it founded?
It had to be after like the witch trials because they would have burned them at the stake. And also, I don't think New York City existed then.
I was going to say that part.
Shoot, I don't know, man. What were people doing after like World War II? 1960.
Boy, I was going to use my +1, but it's got to be before that. It's got to be way before that. Oh, man, I'm worried I'm going to bust by not going early enough. The witch trials were at the tail end of the 1600s. So, and I think you had good logic there. So I'm going to go ahead and say 1750.
You could have picked any number. She busted by like a mile. It was 1902.
Okay, it wasn't that big of a mile.
Wasn't that I was this close to going. Yeah, I mean, I was never going to go later than the 1800s. So yeah, I guess you're right. I had it. So I'm on the board, but I have to get this next one exactly right because she still has her +1 for those keeping track at home.
All right. So magic is not all fun and games. Gilbert Janista, born March 29th, 1878, actually drowned to death when trying to escape from a water-filled milk can.
How could he fit in a milk can?
It was like one of those big things, I guess. I don't know.
A lot of milk.
It was a trick made famous by Harry Houdini, and prior to the performance, the can had been dropped and it damaged the secret escape. In what year did this tragic event happen?
Okay. The hint is he mentioned Harry Houdini made it famous, so we know that it's later than a certain time. If we think back to the first answer and consider the fact that Harry Houdini... I can just give my whole thought process at this point because I know you have your +1, so I basically have zero chance. I believe he was born in 1874, you said.
Well, I told you when Gilbert
he did not live a very
too.
long life. I wasn't paying attention for that part. He was born in 1874. He lived, I think, a pretty short life. He died by being punched in the stomach, by the way. That's a fun fact about Harry Houdini. I'm going to say this was pre-Titanic, but it was right before that. So I'm thinking we're looking at 1908.
1909, Bob.
Yeah, fair play.
All right. This was on November 9th, 1930.
Okay, so I wasn't even that close, but I hope people listened to the hustle and appreciated it. Nerdbomber takes this one home. She moves to 14 and 10. I move to 13 and 9. So the showdown for the top spot continues, but next week I will take on Techtic to see if I can keep pumping that record up. In the meantime, we thank you all for joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed the show today. If you didn't, I
Go
don't
kick
know.
rocks.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you kick whatever you want. You're free to do what you like in this life. You need not come back, but hopefully you do. Hopefully you liked it. You can head over to Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get podcasts. Either way, leave us a review. Hit us up on our Twitter handles mentioned previously in the show, and consider going over to Patreon, giving back to the show. And, in the meantime, everyone be kind to each other if you can. Stay safe and keep on podcasting.